Thank you all for tuning into the Carolina Business Leaders Podcast, where we share stories of local impact makers who carve their path through perseverance, passion, and leading the Carolina way. Today's guest is Chace Campbell. He's the managing attorney at ChaceLaw Limited Company, a practice devoted to helping families in business, probates, and family law. Chace, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Chace.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
You're wearing in the studio. We're excited to talk to you and learn all about your story. So. I know that you are an avid coffee connoisseur, though, as I myself am.
Yes.
Do you have like a favorite coffee shop around here, a favorite brand you'd recommend?
Oh, I got to tell you, I grew up in Seattle.
Gil did not grow up in Seattle, but Gil was from Seattle. Gil Garrison, we talked about earlier.
I have had a few talks about that, but I grew up when Starbucks was not a household name.
Right.
I used to drink coffee at Pike's Place Market.
Yes. Okay, I didn't realize it was like named after that.
Oh yeah, it's
pretty cool.
Pike's Place Market is right there, and in fact, the market is kind of a Seattle landmark, and right across the street is the original Starbucks coffee house.
The original. Wow.
Yes.
It's still in operation.
Still in operation. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And it looks like you just. Well, the last time I was in it, which was a few years ago, it looked like you stepped back in time to what shipping looked like back in, say, 1920s. And so...
That's cool. If we ever go to Seattle, we gotta check that out.
I know, I've never been to Seattle, but I'm also not a coffee drinker, so...
Yeah.
I married I know, I'm sorry. It's not a health thing, it's the taste. I don't know what it is. I can't have it, but I married an avid coffee drinker, so I get to go to all the coffee shops and test out everyone's hot chocolate. Okay. So there's a move there.
All right, so you and I will have a conversation.
You can decide who has the best coffee and who brews the best coffee. I tell you, I was like a strict Keurig guy until my company got one of those nice coffee machines and got the Bridge City beans.
Yes.
And if you want someone to come to work, that's how you do it.
I will tell you, I had a paralegal who left and went back. She was from Canada. And I said, all right, what did you learn while working here? And she said, actually, I learned above anything else the value of a good cup of coffee. I was not expecting that. I was thinking contracts. Yeah. I now understand how the court system works. For her, it was coffee.
If you're running a small to mid-sized business, you know there's simply not enough hours in a day to take care of all of your business needs. From managing health insurance to payroll, procurement, advertising, you're going to need some help to get that initial momentum going. That's why I would partner with Questco. They take care of all the behind-the-scenes administrative and HR work, letting you focus on what truly matters, which is running your business. That's QUESTCO Questco. Visit Questco.net or call your local Questco representative Thomas Owens at 864-477-0843 to get started today. Interesting.
Yes.
Wow.
So is there a local coffee shop that you love? What's your favorite?
Oh, I love Chestnut coffee.
Nice.
Right here in the neighborhood.
Yes.
We love it too. And their hot chocolate's good, FYI.
Okay.
Yes, but that's a good little spot.
Yeah, a client introduced me to it, and I'm like, where did this come from?
Yes.
So that's kind of our now meeting place.
That's great.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, to rear it back into your company and what you do, can you give the listeners just a summary of Chace Law and kind of your role with the company?
Okay. So managing attorney, meaning kind of the CEO of, if you think of a law firm as a business, and the type of law that we practice, from the outside, it looks like it's three different practice areas: estate planning, business, and probate. But internally, and the philosophy that drives us is that's not three different practice areas. That's one continuous, interlinked practice. And so a lot of our estate plans are business owners. In fact, the majority of our estate planning is business owners, because business owners have a very unique challenges, problems that they're trying to solve. And so, like, how do I keep my business going if I die?
That's interesting stuff you don't think about really, or want to think about, but you have to.
And a lot of times it's, they've developed a relationship with their clients that they want to make sure that their clients are continued to take care of. Or their employees are almost like family to them. And I had one who came in and said, listen, it isn't so much what happens to my family. I've got 15 families that all rely upon this business for their livelihoods, for their families' livelihoods. How do we keep them from suddenly all being out of a job?
Wow.
And so
that's a proactive leader.
That is
coming
a very
to you
proactive
with that,
leader.
coming to you with that challenge.
But then also simultaneously they're going, okay, who's going to take care of my kids?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So
business leaders are always juggling 10 different things at once.
oh, absolutely. So the joke that we have is we do estate planning for business owners and other complicated individuals.
It's a good tagline.
I don't want to fall into the other category.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess then as the managing attorney, what does a typical day look like in your world?
My day is really split. My personal day is split between practicing law and, of course, running a business. So
Nice.
we basically have to carve my day into half and say, all right, here's Chace as CEO, here's Chace as an attorney. And because the mind shift is so different between, all right, I'm trying to solve my problems or my firm's problems or my employees' problems to I'm trying to solve my client's problems. Very different hats, very different mindsets.
Have to compartmentalize.
It's just all right. The problem solving is not different, but the mindset that you have to have in order to do that is very different. When it's you've got to think very differently than when you're saying this is someone else's issue. Let me help them with what they're doing. So basically my day gets split horizontally between the mornings are spent more as CEO and the afternoons are spent more as a practicing attorney.
Nice.
When did you establish Chace Law?
We started November 1st, 2002.
Okay.
I left a firm and they bid me, here's a key to the back door. You're always welcome to come here and use our library.
Nice.
What else can we do to help you?
That's great.
And I had a friend, an attorney friend, who said, tell you what, just come work out of my conference room. I'm not using it. It's kind of an extra conference room. Just set up shop and come work here. And so I alternated between using his conference room and using my dining room table.
Oh, very
and
good.
then
So he was letting you set up shop for your company in his
office.
location.
his location.
Yeah.
There's a real camaraderie among attorneys here. in
Yeah,
Greenville
that's what we hear.
That we all kind of, hey, we've been there, we've done that.
Yeah.
Here, let me give you a helping hand.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
so, in fact, one attorney called me and he said, listen, I understand you're just using a conference room right now. And I said, yeah, when I'm not at home. And he said, it's just a room in my office. You're welcome to come and just set up a folding table or a desk, I don't care which, and just use it. And I said, I really don't have the money to pay for it. And he goes, no, you don't understand. It's free.
Wow.
He said, someone gave me a helping hand when I started out. I'm giving you a helping hand.
important.
You'll give someone else a
Absolutely.
helping hand. So, I think I was there for about 3 months, and I finally walked into his office. I said, I feel really bad about it. your empty office. Can I pay you for it? And he goes, okay, what can you pay me? I said, I'm really not sure.
Yeah.
He goes, how about $50?
$50.
I
wow.
said, a month? He goes, yeah. I said, done. And then when I finally got kind of my feet underneath me, we renegotiated it. $350. So
That's cool that your industry, especially here in Greenville, is always helping each other out like that.
it is extremely collegial.
Yeah. Was it like that in law school?
Law school, yes.
Okay, wow.
But then I started out while I was in law school in the Midlands. So while I was clerking, and that's a very different mindset. It's more combative between the attorneys in there, and then you get down into Charleston, and that's.
Are you talking about that location in general?
Just if you
in
look
law?
at South Carolina,
Yes.
Charleston is very, very combative. The Midlands is semi-combative. Greenville is almost like collaborative.
That's cool.
nice.
Where, I've heard of that.
We may have to go to court and we may absolutely beat up on each other, but no hard feelings.
It's work, right? And then you leave work and you're friends again, which we picked up on that a little bit. We've had a couple attorneys on the podcast, and we can tell there's collaboration, you work together. And I found it interesting that even when you leave a firm, you can take cases with you, whereas our industry, financial services, you sign non-competes. It's
Yes.
very strict. So I think it's neat that attorneys want each other to succeed. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to just solve problems
Right.
for people. And so,
That's great.
yeah.
So your practice has changed a ton, I'm sure, from day one of borrowing desks to where it is now. So give us the evolution of Chace Law over the last 20 years.
Okay. To understand where we are now, you gotta have to understand my life before Chace Law began, which is I started out in a boutique law firm out in Charlotte, and I learned a lot about how law practices should run like a business.
Okay.
And the managing attorney kind of took me under his wing and said, you know, here, let me kind of show you behind the scenes what you need to know about what it is like to actually run a law firm.
How old were you at this point?
I was fresh out of law school. I mean, this was my great first job.
That's the best first job, though.
Yeah,
Whenever
so-
you have someone that like at that level, just showing you the ropes of
Yeah.
how this is,
And
how it
taking you
works.
under their
Yeah.
wing.
Yeah,
That's
he
huge.
really did. And
That's
so
pretty
he'd take me to lunch and just talk and, you know, okay, what have you learned? What are you observing? Okay, we just had a personnel issue where we had to let someone go. What was it like from your perspective? So I did not realize how much I was getting kind of set up for this back then. I was just
Working a
a
job,
sponge.
yeah.
Sure.
And then I moved to Greenville, and I ended up being a temporary in-house counsel for a local company who was going through a lawsuit. And what they did is they said, all right, here is your staff from among our staff. They report to you, they are your group, you are their group leader. They treated me like I was an employee, even though I wasn't technically an employee, and this was my team. And they told me, you have the power to hire and fire your team.
Whoa.
And if you have an issue that you have to fire them, fire them.
Wow.
And what was interesting is because this was kind of a short-lived project, because the litigation was going to come to an end, I got a lot of people who were kind of when I was done with them, they weren't going to be going back to the company. They had no prospects.
How old were you at this point?
26, 27 years old.
So at that age, you already had the responsibility of potentially hiring, firing people. Yeah,
Yes.
moving pieces around. Yeah.
What I found interesting is I learned a lot about managing people at that point. And
Which that's probably not typical for an attorney at that age.
no, it isn't.
Yeah.
It really isn't. And some of those I had to let go for cause. Some of those they removed themselves. And some of those I found that they had skill sets that the company really needed. And they ended up going back into the company when I was done with them.
Nice.
So that I learned an important lesson with that, which is I had one young lady who she just couldn't do her job. And I called her into the conference room and I said, tell me about yourself. You know, I'm trying to figure out why. And she said, well, what do you want to know? And I said, well, what do you do for fun? She goes, I build mainframes. I said, like mainframe computers? She goes, yes. And I said, that's a hobby? And she goes, yeah, I've got a 2-room apartment and I live in, my bedroom's in one room and the other room is my lab for people, companies hire me to build them a mainframe.
Wow.
This is late 90s.
Yeah.
And I said, I have a question. Then what are you doing on my team? And she goes, well, to be honest, I'm really bored. And I said, I think so. Because I was having her do what I thought was her skill level, and I realized I just completely misread her skills
Sure.
level. And I said, okay, the reason we're talking to each other is because you're not doing your job. But I realized I'm asking you to do something that is just totally outside what you're naturally bent towards. So
Right.
let's try this. And I had a need, and her mindset skills matched that need, so I shifted her into that.
Nice.
And I said, but I still need you to do this because it's necessary, and I need you to do that until we find someone else to do it. But
Sure.
here, let me give you something else to do. And she just blossomed and thrived. And ultimately, I went back to the head of IT for the company, and said, I think that you really need to look at hiring her. And they ended up interviewing her and hiring her back
That's
into the
great.
company. So I ended
Wow.
up losing her as a result.
Oh.
But that's all right.
You could have taken the easy route, which is just let her go or get rid of her and like figure out someone else that can do that job that you need and not put that much thought or effort into it. But I've heard good leaders, they want the best for their team as well. They know that in the long run, that's going to pay dividends. And especially because the company ended up keeping her. You know,
Yes.
they didn't have to like spend money on retraining somebody or severance package or anything. So that was, obviously a very good sign of leadership right there, in my opinion.
And this was back, if you think about it, end of '99, beginning of 2000, that era is when we were starting to shift away from a lot of mainframes. But she was the one person who actually understood mainframes.
Yeah.
And the company needed someone who...
That's so funny.
so it was weird because they didn't realize that they had someone who literally did this as a hobby in-house. And they're like, where did she come from?
That's awesome.
that cubicle over there.
Yeah. That's cool.
So...
Well, good. So, how did you decide you wanted to work with business owners? What led to that niche?
I grew up with a serial entrepreneur for a dad, and he would do fun things like wake me up in the morning and go, "Hey, you want to play hooky from school today?" What are you talking about? I'm thinking about going and buying a company. You want to go with me?
Buying a company.
So we would go and we'd talk about it on the way there, and then I just kind of sit there in the corner and watch him. And
That's a cool experience, though.
It's great exposure at a young age.
And there were times where he would go, "No, I'm not going to buy it." And we would talk about it on the way home, like what is it that he saw that he did not. And he would ask me, "Okay, what did you see?" And a lot of questions, like, "Okay, what kind of return on investment do you think it would have given us if?"
Nice.
And so, I guess I got an education that most people don't get.
You're probably
Right.
skipping school and learning more.
My mother, who was a school teacher, did not let that occur much. So, and she also had a rule for every day that I did skip. I truly got that day made up one-on-one by her.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yes.
Why do you think you went the law route instead of the business route? Originally, because you're kind of meshing the two now.
Well, interestingly, I have always had an interest in the law, like literally from age 5. And
Wow.
my parents kept saying, "Oh yeah, Chase is just, he got this in his mind. Maybe, that's just, it will kind of work its way out." Or we don't want him to be wed to this idea just because, I want to be a firefighter, so,
But at a young age, like if someone asks, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? You say, I want to be an attorney.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
So they kind of put things in front of me to go, "Hey, why don't you think about this? Why don't you think about this? You're really good at this." They wanted me to keep my mind at least as open as possible. My grandmother, on the other hand, kept going, "You would make a really good attorney."
That's
And
sweet.
so she exposed me to Perry Mason, and we had a tradition of Wednesday nights, Perry Mason, and
So what is Perry Mason?
Perry Mason was a television show
Oh,
about
okay.
a lawyer.
Gotcha.
Raymond Burr played that.
Gotcha.
And to this day, I associate my grandmother with Reuben sandwiches, Wednesday nights, Perry Mason,
Oh.
talking about being So,
That's cool.
my father one day said, "I don't think it's what you think it is. So go hang out with my attorney." Just follow them for a day. It's not as sexy as you think it is. And I came home and I said, oh, I had so much fun.
I love it.
And his attorney was Lyle. And Lyle ended up becoming my mentor.
Oh,
Wow.
And then years later, I got a package in the mail from Lyle, and there was a handwritten note on the top of it. It said, "Dear Chase, as you know, I'm retiring from the practice of law. And as you know, I've been your parents' attorney for years, so I figured fitting for you to take over. And so here are my files on your parents."
Oh.
So,
There you go.
and I am their attorney now.
That's awesome.
If I can't believe that at such a young age you knew you wanted to be an attorney, you had fun on the job. Like, it's
The other thing that my dad did not realize was his office was right across the alley from the courthouse. And I used to go to his office and drop my book bag, and then I'd slip out the back door and in the back door of the courthouse, and then I'd go and sit and watch trials.
whoa, that's cool.
And one
That's
day
pretty
the judge
fun.
goes, "Young man, come here." And I go walk up to the bench, and he goes, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Uh-oh." And I said, "I thought it was an open courtroom." And he goes, "Well, it is, but why are you here?" And I said, "I just wanted to watch what happened."
That's awesome.
And he goes, "All right. Bailiff, bring a chair up here." And he parked me right next to him on the dais.
Wow.
And,
Whoa, that's cool.
and so and he would do like, "Please," and so he'd go through the whole plea process, and then he'd go, "What do you think, Chase?" And we talk about it, and he'd go, "Okay, I'll talk to you about it afterwards." And then he'd pronounce whatever was the sentence, and
What town is this in?
Everett, Washington.
Okay, you're in Seattle, that's right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's such a cool experience.
Yeah, so I got a chance to see courtroom work from his perspective, and
Which no other kids are getting that. And you're, I guess, middle school, high school?
young high school at this age.
Nice, that's
Yeah.
perfect age. What's such good exposure?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. What took you from Washington to South Carolina?
The University of South Carolina.
Okay. Very
All
good.
the Tigers, but that's cool.
We are
I
Clemson
know, I
Tigers,
know.
but hey.
I support the law program because Clemson doesn't have a law program.
We have a far better law school than you.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, I'm 100% all on board for Carolina law. So
I did have one client who said, "I want in my estate plan that if any of my children attend the University of South Carolina, that they are disinherited." And I said,
he was serious about this.
"Oh, you've been very serious about this." And I said, "You do understand that your attorney graduated from there?" He goes, "Oh, yeah. But if they attend law school there, then they're not disinherited."
Correction.
Well, law school's okay because Clemson doesn't have it.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
crazy. So cool. I guess let's jump into some of the exit planning for business.
Sure. So Chase and I, thankfully, have gotten to meet lots and lots of times on exit planning, along with my father. As y'all know, I'm in a family business. But with that being said, exit planning is a hot topic right now for business owners. So why do you think that is, and what's the importance of exit planning?
I think that it's always been a hot topic. We just, no one was ever talking about it. So, I mean, anyone who is an entrepreneur or business owner, and those are not synonymous terms in my world, they do stop and think, okay, what is the long-term game plan? But they didn't have anyone to talk to. I mean, who do you talk to? If you talk to your competitor, they're, it's like throwing blood in the water.
Right.
If you talk to someone who's not a business owner, they kind of look at you like you have three eyes.
It's not a huge community, I would imagine.
It isn't. And when you stop and think about it, that, entrepreneurs and business owners, it's lumped together, are only 10% of the entire population of the world. Then you realize it is a very small, lonely place in that world. And so I think that as people have become aware that there are other people who are struggling with it, they're starting to stop and thinking. But that is kind of added to or augmented by the fact that we are watching the baby boomer and the amount of wealth that is about to change hands over the next 10 years is just phenomenal. And I think that people are starting to say, wait a minute, I no longer am looking at this as I work for myself, and when I'm done, I'm just going to close up shop. I think they're starting to think longer term of, all right, how can I use this as a platform to take care of my family?
Right.
How do I capture some of the captive wealth that's been built up, but I've never really thought about? And just frankly, I think people are a little more mindful of, I want my clients to be taken care of, or I want my customers to be taken care of. Yeah. And they used to think, I don't know how to do it. Right. But now it's, let me see if I can hand them off to someone who will take care of them just as well as I would. And so, those three things seem to be the culmination of
the hot topic nowadays.
Yes.
So what's your process, or what kind of advice would you give to someone that comes to you and says, hey, I'm looking to potentially sell my business? They don't know if they want to, they're thinking about it. How would you advise them and help them make that decision?
I will tell you that most of the time that people are starting to think of selling their business, there's an acute issue that has occurred. It may be like someone just ended up in the hospital, or it may be that someone has just gotten an offer of, hey, I might be interested in your business. Sign this letter of intent, LOI, and then we'll talk, or sign this non-disclosure agreement, and then we want you to go open kimono, but we're not really that serious, and we're just dating everyone along the way, And so at that point, if that's the first time they're thinking about it, it's almost like it's too late. And I will tell you that there are very, very ruthless people out there that are,
they don't have your intentions, or your
best intentions.
Yeah, your best interests. Yeah, so.
They're almost like, oh, here, let me. I use this really bad analogy, but it's probably more true than we would like to think. It's almost like they go to 10 different girls all in high school and say, I want to take you to the prom, and I want to take you to the prom, and I want to take you to the prom, and none of them realize that he's telling this to 10 different girls.
I know a guy that did that.
Okay. And is he still alive?
I haven't seen him since high school.
But, and everyone goes, ooh, hey, I'm attractive, and, whatnot. And they start, getting excited about it. And he's like, I'm only asking 10 different people because I'm really zeroing on this person, but I don't want anyone to know who really is the person I'm zeroing in on. And so people get used a lot. And so if that's the first time they start thinking about it, there is an emotional danger, there is a legal danger, they can get themselves into hot water way too quickly. So if someone, I tell my clients this, well in advance of any of that occurring, you really need to start thinking about what is both your succession plan and your exit strategy. You got to understand that those are two different things. The succession plan is what is if there's an acute issue, someone is dead, someone ends up in the hospital, we have a catastrophe, how does this business continue on? What is the continuity of government, continuity of business plan that's going on? And then at the same time, once you kind of get the how do we protect it mindset in place, then you go, all right, how do we start thinking about under what terms do you want to plan on getting out? Because we're all going to get out of our businesses.
Yes.
You have one of three choices. You're either going to retire, die, or go insane.
That's right.
Choose one.
Yes.
So, you might as well start thinking about, all right, what happens if we die or go insane? Okay, now that's the acute issue. Yeah. Now let's talk about what does retirement look like? And if they're willing to accept that, then we can start the process of putting in both the estate planning structure, the legal structure, the financial structure, the operational structure. Those are kind of your four major components that need to be put in place before they ever start thinking about really what is going to be person the ideal buyer. Because if you don't have those 4 things in place, then it's just going to be a crash and burn down the road.
So to recap, the 4 things are
The estate plan,
yes,
the legal structure. So there's the estate plan structure, the legal structure, the financial structure, and the operational structure. Those are the 4 really big moving components.
Which is a great segue, because my next question to you is, if someone, a business owner, approaches you early, which that's always the goal, before they're exiting or selling, who would be the key players that they need to have in their circle? You as the estate planning attorney, but what else would they need?
Okay, so obviously the estate plan attorney, and hopefully the estate plan attorney, business attorney, whether that's one attorney who practices both areas, or a lot of times it's the estate planning attorney is one attorney, the business attorney is the other.
Sure.
Since those 2 can think in similar terms.
Sure.
We're going to get to the M&A attorney down the road.
Right.
And then on the finance side, it's the financial advisor, the accountant. And there really are kind of 2 different kind of accountants. You have the accountant who's been looking in the rearview mirror, and then you need the accountant who's thinking forward-looking.
Right.
Because we've got to think of the tax structure that's going to occur both retroactively and prospectively, as well as, how are we going to fund your lifestyle if you are no longer working in the business, if the business is covering some of the expenses that you now have to cover yourself, just the loss of income, the loss of identity, things along those lines, all wrap up in that financial component.
Loss of tax write-offs, I'm sure.
Yes, and then so those are those key players, and then you get to the operational side of, all right, literally how who's going to be the succession, who's going to be the management team, who is going to be, how do we restructure this operation? Like when most businesses start, they're started by 1 or 2 people a lot of times who play butcher, baker, candlestick maker, and they do everything.
Yes.
And then it's like, okay, I can't do everything, so I'm going to hire a receptionist.
Right.
Or I can't do everything, I'm going to hire a marketing person. They think of those things, but they never stop and think about, okay, what are all of the areas of responsibility that I have continued to maintain?
Right.
And how am I going to be able to be replaced because someone's got to do what I'm doing? And therein lies a very interesting psychological problem, because I have watched business owners go through loss of identity. It is like
after selling, or
even before selling, just, oh my word, I didn't realize all the things that I have continued to be responsible for, because it just kind of creeped up on them.
Right.
And then when they go, but how am I going to give this to someone else? No one else can do it as well as I can. Or, okay, someone else can do it better than I can. Oh no, they feel as if they're like a failure. Or there's just, I'm going to tell you, there's a sense of loss of identity, and there's almost a grieving process like someone died.
Right.
I can definitely believe that.
And so...
Well, people say your business is your baby, so...
or your jealous mistress sometimes. But, that has to be dealt with.
Right.
So you want to toss in something that most people don't think about, but a counselor or a therapist is truly or a life coach or a business coach or something like that is truly helpful for that.
That's good.
So you talk about how business owners should be kind of considering this all throughout the journey, but businesses are dynamic and ever changing. So how often should they revisit the idea of the financial plan and estate planning in case there is, or whenever the day comes, I should say, that they decide to sell?
The first time that they think about it is before they ever start the business.
Before they start the business.
Yes. And so
that's early planning right there.
Because I have come to the conclusion that if you don't think through what is my exit strategy going to look like, and it will change over time, but if you don't stop and think about how is my exit plan strategy going to look like, at least as we're beginning this business, then you really are not ready to start a business. I'm that serious about it, because if you can tell me what the end goal looks like, then you can tell me how we need to structure things today. But if you don't know what that end goal looks like, it's almost like, okay, we're going to take a journey, but where are we going? No idea.
Right.
Well, then should we go north or south or east or west?
Flip a coin.
Flip a coin, yeah. And that's how a lot of people live their lives.
Yeah.
And I believe in this so much that if you come to me and say, I want to start a business, and I say, all right, what's the exit plan? Just tell me what the exit plan is. I understand that it may change, but just tell me what your current exit plan is.
Yeah.
And you go, I don't have one. I won't form your business for you.
Okay. Yeah.
That's great.
That is how important it is.
Yeah. Start with the end in mind. I think that's a line that you use a lot, isn't it?
Begin with the end in mind.
There we go.
Should you have an idea of how much your business is worth at all times? So that if someone does come to you with one of these fake offers that we talked about earlier.
There is a danger in overanalyzing. I mean, it's kind of like, I just invested in a company, now let me check the stock market.
Yeah.
Right, right.
No, that's not necessarily the best course of action, but at least as your life, what I found is in a business owner's life cycle, there is going to be a major event every 3 years. There's going to be a major event in their personal life, and there's going to be a major event in their professional life. So those two don't always coincide.
Yeah.
So if they have children, they can see the children growing up, and children kind of evolve or grow up in kind of a 4-year cycle. 0 to 4 is very different than 5 to 9.
Sure.
And 10 to 14 is very different than 15 to 19.
Right.
Okay. For business, it tends to be 0 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 9, 10 to 12. So if you think about it, that once you understand that reality, then you're going to find that there is a tweak that has to occur roughly every 3 years. Or anytime you exceed 3 times your previous growth.
Yeah.
And once that occurs, it's almost like a reset of, all right, everything's changed, let's address it, and now what?
Interesting. This is all new insights for me because, I don't have a business, so maybe you consider the podcast a business. But
It is a business.
Yeah, but I haven't thought about like the process of what selling a business looks like and what all's involved with it. I had no idea. I've heard of people just getting offers, and that's when they start thinking about it when they get offers, but that's apparently the wrong approach. Yeah. And I can see, because it's always better to be prepared for anything, especially something as big as selling a business. That we're talking potentially millions of dollars here, so always best to be prepared for that.
Well, let me ask you this. Would you ever think about getting married when someone finally just asked you for the first time?
Good question, Chase. No.
Precisely.
Yeah, that's cool. I would love to hear about some of the obstacles that you've come across in forming your business and in your law career. Just some of the, I guess, shaping moments maybe that you can recall of
Overcoming challenges and such. What are some of the major challenges you've encountered and were able to overcome?
Well, I will tell you that the continuous challenge is estate planning, probate, by necessity is a morbid subject. And so overcoming the concept of people wanting to face their own mortality is just an interesting experience. But I will tell you this much. Tim McGraw got it right in his song, Live Like You're Dying.
Yeah.
Once you do it, it is truly a freeing experience. And I have watched people, once they have come to grips with that, then there's a sense of freedom to live life. And so I take that challenge on.
Yeah.
But,
Sure.
I will tell you that where we really had that watershed moment of, wait a minute, this is not just 3 different areas of law. This is actually one continuous spectrum of practice. Came as a result of a case that I had where I was appointed by the probate court to sell a business out of probate. And I started my due diligence, and what I found to be, the facts of the case were very interesting, because this guy had a business that had 5 employees. So 5 other families all relied upon his business for their livelihood. And he had done a very good job of setting up this business that he could run in his absence. so the fact that he died was not the death knell on this business, but he had 2 young children, so minors. He had a wife of a few years, but she did not have a whole lot to do with business because she was at home raising the kids. And so his death was a loss of income for their entire family.
Yes.
And the irony of the situation was his entire business was end-of-life planning. And he had no will.
Wow.
And I went,
wow.
Yeah, the irony.
Yeah.
so that caused me to do a little bit of digging, and I looked at several years of probate court records. And attorneys who pass away are about 50% of the time dying without a will themselves.
That's hard to believe.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, this is truly the physician heal thyself.
It is.
Or
It
complex
is.
kids have no shoes.
Yes.
And I have seen sitting judges die without wills. And
That's
it's
terrible.
like, of all people,
Yeah.
and so I did the best I could with this case, and I maximized what I think was better than I expected return on selling the business. But I did realize, I asked the business broker who helped me sell the business, I said, what do you think this business could have gotten if we had just a simple, and I let it out, corporate structure, here, things like that. He said, we could have easily got 4 times the amount of money that we sold this business for.
Wow.
And I said, all right, what is it that I'm missing out of this? And I came back from court that day, and I went and just kind of stared out the window and watched traffic pass by my office. And I'm thinking, what am I missing? What am I missing? What am I missing? And it finally hit me. These are 3 different practice areas. This is one continuous practice area.
Right.
And I called a meeting of the staff, kind of an impromptu meeting. I said, take a look at, consider this reality. And they all looked at me and they said, no, those areas of law are very, very different. Okay, we can see the overlap between estate planning and probate. Okay. But business and estate planning, business probate. And so I started charting it out, and I showed them, on a spectrum, one continuous, one step to the next, to the next, to the next. And it was fun to watch their eyes light up, like, oh my word. And that case single-handedly changed everything for us.
Wow.
So
that's a key moment for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, one of the questions we're going to ask you today is, what drives you to fight for your clients, and despite all the stress and the emotion that you deal with, what makes you do that each and every day? And I can only imagine it's stories like this.
Well, that, and I have gotten to see generations. I told you I'm 53.
You would not know.
We are into our first 4th generation clients.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Given the stats, businesses die at the 3rd generation,
Yeah.
so to make it to 4,
Yes.
that's amazing.
So that's the fun. So you ask what drives us. When we can pull something from certain doom back and go, okay, we can actually do something with this. It's fun to have a high five moment.
Yeah.
But also, we will have people who come in who are just absolutely devastated, and then they kind of throw the proverbial puzzle pieces on the table, and like, I don't even have a box cover. I don't know where to start. And helping them put their life in order, and whether it's on the estate plan side or on the probate side, just being able to form some semblance of order and watch them go, okay, that was rough, but we made it, is absolutely.
That's rewarding.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's cool. We'll end it up here shortly, but if you were speaking to a young professional that wants to go into law but isn't quite sure what route to take, what's the best advice that you would offer to him?
Law school is the ultimate liberal arts education. Al Pacino in The Devil's Advocate was asked, why law? If the plot is Al Pacino plays the devil, but his personification is he's a lawyer, and in one scene he was asked why law, and his answer was, it's the ultimate backdoor, baby. The law's in everything.
Yeah.
So if someone is interested in going to law, truly get as broad of a liberal arts education as you can, and make your interests and your hobbies as wide and varied as you can. Someone gave me that advice, and I found that it is truly a great bit of advice. But then the law is a tough field. I'll make no bones about it. And sometimes you go, that was rough, and there are easier ways of making a living. But the rewards of helping someone. So if you want to be a lawyer, truly make sure that's what you want to do. But if it is, embrace it with everything you've got.
Nice.
Love it, love it. And then we have to end on a fun fact about Chace. And that fun fact is a detail in your will about your skull. So please share with us what it is that you've got written up.
Okay. The background on this is my mother was a drama teacher. I grew up on the stage, and in fact, between college and law school, I was a stage actor. So I have always wanted to play Yorick in Hamlet, and so I have a provision in my will, and it does exist, that says, my skull will be donated to the Greenville Shakespeare Society that I can play Yorick in a rendition of Hamlet as long as I can play Bill Mention.
Amazing. A future actor in Hamlet here in Greenville, South Carolina.
That's right.
Love it, love it.
Chace, thanks so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Chace. That was very insightful. We appreciate it.
Thank you.